Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much to the organizers for the invitation to participate in this important event organized by ANIMA. It is a great pleasure for me to be with all of you today. I would like to provide you with a brief background on the OECD's perspective on the global landscape for international investment and the role of investment promotion and facilitation in OECD countries. Let me start by providing you with some context for our discussion. Our latest projections, released last month, highlighted that the global economic recovery remains strong. While global GDP dropped by 3.4% in 2020, the OECD forecast is a global growth of 5.7% in 2021 and 4.5% in 2022. You can see here that the recent projections are brighter than those from December last year, and that we're slowly catching up with our 2019 projections. But the recovery remains uneven, with countries emerging from the crisis facing different challenges. International investment needs to play an integral part in the recovery. The figures for foreign direct investment have been gloomy and remain uncertain. Global FDI flows dropped by 38% in 2020 compared to 2019, according to OECD analysis. The decline in the OECD area was driven by large negative inflows in the Netherlands and a large drop in the US, but also in the UK, France, Germany, and many others. This drop accentuated an already steady decline of FDI flows over the past 6 years, led by advanced economies. OECD outflows also declined sharply last year by 48%, with large decreases in Germany and Japan, for example. Let's move on now to the policy aspect. Investment policy responses to the COVID-19 pandemic have been numerous and diverse. Many governments implemented measures to facilitate investment and ease business establishment. However, at the same time, concerns about essential security risks associated with FDI have been growing. Many governments have gradually established or reinforced acquisition and ownership-related policies to safeguard national security interests, particularly in the form of investment screening mechanism. Last year was an exceptional year in terms of policymaking activity, with 50 new screening mechanisms or reforms of existing ones recorded. This is one measure per week on average. The pandemic has accelerated rather than triggered this trend, which has continued in 2021. In terms of sectors covered, the COVID-19 pandemic contributed to an extension of investment screening mechanisms to include health-related sectors. But the focus of attention is shifting back to its pre-pandemic course, where foreign investment in advanced technology is perceived as leading to exposure of essential security interests. In this environment, governments are seeking to keep the right balance between addressing the potential risks of FDI and keeping markets open and attractive. In terms of the investment promotion and facilitation responses to the crisis, we observed that in the first months of the pandemic, governments around the world and investment promotion agencies in particular sought to tackle the pressing issues of existing investors. The attention switched entirely to assist companies that were already established. In the longer run, the second point relates to the previous slide and the policy-making activity. In the current context of uncertainty, creating the conditions for a sound business environment is crucial. There is also a growing attention given to investment facilitation by many countries and international platforms such as the WTO, for example. At the OECD, we welcome this development as investment facilitation is about designing and implementing various types of measures to reduce obstacles faced by companies when they decide to invest. The COVID crisis has also strengthened some changing imperatives for IPAs and other public agencies. Imperatives that were already there before the crisis but that were accelerated and became more pressing. These include digitalization and sustainability. The OECD has been working over the past months on these two work streams under the leadership of the OECD Investment Promotion Agency Network. We conducted surveys with OECD IPAs to collect data, perform comparative analysis, and present good practices. In the following slides, I would like to show you some preliminary results of the survey finding. You can see in the left figure here, the growing importance given to the digital economy compared to other sectors in the investment promotion business. It shows the resources, financial and human, dedicated by IPAs to the attraction of FDI in digital sectors as compared to others, before the crisis, during the crisis, and in the near future. And you can see that the proportion of IPAs planning to increase the resources to the digital economy are growing. In the right graph, you can see that top priorities for IPAs in OECD countries include software development, data centers, ICT, digital health, and artificial intelligence. More surprising, at the bottom, e-commerce is only prioritized by 25% of IPAs, despite its booming during the pandemic. The main strength identified by IPAs to attract digital FDI is an overall favorable business environment, which relates again to the point we made earlier on policy advocacy and investment facilitation. Other top strengths include the availability of digital skills and a favorable ecosystem, which is corroborated by the major challenges that you can see on the right, that include the lack of adequate skills, inefficient public institutions, and a poor legal framework. We also found that policy measures such as digital clusters and incubators, as well as targeted investor outreach, are more widely used by IPAs than fiscal and non-fiscal incentives. The implication of digital transformation on investment promotion also concerns the way governments and public agencies operate. Investment promotion agencies, for example, are adopting new ways of working to attract and assist firms, a trend which has of course been considerably accelerated by the COVID-19 crisis. In the left figure, you see that over 90% of OECD IPAs report that the pandemic accelerated the use of digital tools in their operations. It has not only been necessary to adapt to the new context, but also to increase relevance and achieve better results. As you can see in the right graph, in the future, the majority of OECD IPAs plan to extend the use of digital tools, particularly for promotion and marketing activities, but also for investment facilitation. Let me now move to the other changing imperative for IPAs and present you with some results of the second survey. IPAs consider that sustainability is increasingly an important objective when they are setting their prioritization strategy. When we asked them to which SDGs they contribute most, 3 of them stood out: a sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth that create decent jobs, closely followed by building a resilient infrastructure and sustainable industrialization, and supporting access to affordable and sustainable energy. But as you can see, much fewer IPAs track whether the attracted investments actually contribute to these outcomes, although they tend to use specific indicators, as you can see some examples in the table on the right. Another way to look at IPA contributions to sustainable development outcomes is to look at their key performance indicators, which IPAs prepare when they develop their investment promotion strategies, when they set their objectives, their priorities. As you can see, priorities for FDI promotion are dominated by productivity and innovation, and by job creation and skills. Low carbon transition KPIs are used by less than half of IPAs, and gender equality is tracked only by 16% of them. The challenge for IPAs is to translate these prioritization indicators in monitoring and evaluation tools. to track the extent to which the attracted investments contribute to the intended objectives. We tend actually to observe a certain link between these two types of indicators, as IPAs tend to use even less monitoring and evaluation indicators related to sustainable development objectives. But these research are still ongoing, and I look forward to sharing them, the results of these surveys with you in the next few weeks or months. On this very topic, before concluding, I wanted to highlight as well that the OECD developed 2 years ago the FDI qualities indicators to measure the sustainable development impacts of FDI on host economy. The indicators focus on 4 clusters derived from the Sustainable Development Goals, as you can see here on the left. They compare, for example, the level of wages across foreign and domestic firms in a given country. They can also assess whether FDI is concentrated in female-dominated sectors or in cleaner activities. Policymakers and IPAs can use these indicators to assess how FDI supports national objectives. We are now working on an FDI qualities policy tool to help governments make the most of investment opportunities to support sustainable development. So I thank you for your attention. You can find here some OECD material on the topics we discussed today that you might find useful. And I would be glad to hear your thoughts and receive your questions.